Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. I'm back here today to talk a little half NBA, half college basketball, starting to become kind of a theme here. First half, we're going to talk about Panic Button. We're going to bring back that. I think I had a co-host last time. Panic Button was a segment, but just talking about a couple of teams in both conferences that I do find a little bit concerning here down the stretch. Quarter mark left of the season, about 20 games or so for most teams. Recording this on Tuesday, February 28th. And then second half of this will be about 3 days or 4 days before you hear or see UNC Duke in Chapel Hill. I am doing a Playback.tv live stream. Don't forget to check that out. Go ahead and follow, create your Playback TV account, link your TV provider. That'll all be linked in link in the description below. I'm super excited to connect with you guys. I'm going to have Ryan Hammer and Carl and potentially Alex from Jimmer Range to talk a couple of different seeding implications of this game, UNC and Duke. So I'm going to preview the game today, give my thoughts on who I think wins, what I think is important for the matchup for both teams. Before we get into it, don't forget that SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor of the Two Pointers Podcast. You get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com or in the SeatGeek app. Code 2Pointers. Download the SeatGeek app by the link in the description below or check out SeatGeek.com. $20 off your first purchase. Code 2Pointers. Thank you, SeatGeek, for being the presenting sponsor. All right. Now that is all kicked off and ready to go, let's talk about, I'm going to do the West first, and then we'll go over the East. We'll talk about the panic button teams. Teams I'm a little worried about down the stretch here, and teams I'm not. Teams that, and I say worried, I'm just, take this context how you want. Obviously, I'm going to sit here and say I'm not worried about the Houston Rockets because they're 13-47. Nothing to panic about. There are plenty of things to panic about with the Houston Rockets. Playoff implications is not one of them. The Spurs... The Thunder I am a little worried about, but I'm going to just exempt them because Shea's had these, we'll call them phantom injuries for now, down the stretch here. I don't think they're remotely even trying to make a playoff push. I think they were just talented enough that they were winning enough games. Totally fine if they stay at that 13 spot and get them in a better chance to land Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson or other high draft capital here. So I'm not really worried about the Thunder. I think this is probably better for them if they continue to lose. Then you have the Lakers, Blazers, and Pelicans at 12, 11, and 10, respectively. I'm going to start with the Los Angeles Lakers. Obviously, as you're hearing this, you have already known that LeBron James is going to be out. What we thought was indefinitely is now going to be a minimum of 2 weeks. That ankle injury is going to be reevaluated. I am worried, and I'm going to officially hit the panic button on the Lakers because I don't care how good they've looked 4-1 since the All-Star break. Jared Vanderbilt's defense and Anthony Davis's offense down the stretch against the 27-point comeback versus Dallas. I am a little worried about the Lakers team. I think the lack of D'Angelo Russell, as much as I know I have made my thoughts very clear on D'Angelo Russell, I think he is important for this team, especially down the stretch. I am going to hit the panic button on the Los Angeles Lakers. I do think they're going to have to really fight to stay 500 here while LeBron is gone, and then obviously you're going to have to get a huge push against some of the tougher teams down the stretch. They're 16-20 in the conference this year. They're 3-9 against their division, which is a very, very tough division with Sacramento, Phoenix, the Clippers, and even Golden State there. We'll talk about a little bit more about those teams in a minute, but they've got to get their stuff together. I am really worried about that much of Anthony Davis being, forced to be that guy and take on the full load while LeBron is gone. Obviously, we saw what he could look like earlier this year when he had that unbelievable 17-game stretch before he got hurt. So I am officially hitting the panic button on the Portland Trailblazers, on the Los Angeles Lakers. I was looking at Portland, and they were the next team we're going to mention here. Portland is going to be the team I am not going to hit the panic button on Portland because I don't think they're that good anyway. That's no disrespect to Damian Lillard, who just scored 71 points. I am not discrediting that in any way. It was an unbelievable performance. I'm glad that he did it, but I don't value them as that team that's going to, even if they get in at that 7, 8, 9, 10 and win a couple play-in games, I don't think they're going to give any of Denver, Memphis, Sacramento, Phoenix, the Clippers, or even Dallas a problem in the playoffs. So I am not hitting the panic button on the Portland Trailblazers. The team I am hitting the panic button on, is the New Orleans Pelicans. The New Orleans Pelicans are once again without Zion Williamson indefinitely. This is probably going to stretch into the middle or end of March. They have only played 12 games together this year, they being Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson together. They're starting to slip in some of the defensive and offensive metrics. They are not impressing me in terms of these close games. They don't have necessarily that closer. Brandon Ingram is having to do a lot by himself. And obviously teams are trying to figure them out as a one-trick pony. If Brandon Ingram is your primary scorer, creator, CJ McCollum, obviously, you're not going to win a championship, or you're not even going to compete as a team that the Pelicans were kind of this pretty pick to be the surprise team in the West this year. And if you don't have your best player in Zion Williamson, it doesn't open up the rest of the floor for your guys around the way this team is built, which is with Zion as the core piece. I am hitting the panic button on the New Orleans Pelicans. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the next team. I begrudgingly want to hit the panic button. Should I? Let me know in the comments below. Would you hit the panic button on the Minnesota Timberwolves right now? I'm going to say yes, only because every night it seems like they have a different guy hurt or out. Last night it was Rudy Gobert. But the Minnesota Timberwolves, I don't think, as currently constructed, are a valuable winning playoff play-in competitive team. I'm going to hit the panic button. I do think they can get going. I think Anthony Edwards is that kind of player to be able to lead them into the playoffs. There's a lot of things telling me that the Timberwolves are going to change my mind, but I'm going to hit the panic button on the Timberwolves. I just don't think Gobert is that type of player anymore in terms of, he's got played off the floor in every playoff or play-in series, so I don't think Rudy Gobert is going to be impactful enough offensively for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I do think Mike Conley is a really good addition. I think a veteran presence in the locker room like him is going to be really helpful for them, but the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm going to hit the panic button on. The Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz, I am not going to hit the panic button on because I see them sliding, and I see them sliding on purpose probably. I do know that they are talented. They're 31-31 at the 8 seed right now, but I see teams like Portland, Los Angeles, even the Pelicans and Timberwolves, teams like that are going to fight in there. The play-in's so big. 4 spots is huge, right? So, the Jazz probably end up in the 9-10 spot. Doesn't mean I'm not going to understandably not hit the panic button. I don't think they're trying to win, but if they keep winning, great. They've got draft capital, obviously, in the Minnesota Timberwolves and other places as well, Cleveland, from those Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert trades. I don't think that they have any reason to panic for the fact that they're 31-31 and they were supposed to be in this San Antonio Spurs type position at 14-47 around that range. So shout out to Will Hardy, very deserving Coach of the Year candidate. Shouldn't win it probably, but very deserving of what they are building there in Utah. I'm not hitting the panic button on them. The Golden State Warriors, I want to be upfront and say that there are a lot of people right now that are going to be hitting the panic button on them, but Clay had 44 the other night. They won that game pretty handedly. I know we're waiting on Draymond Green's injury. Still, I don't think, unless I've missed it, I don't think that's happened. By the time you're hearing this, it probably would have happened. What we know on his injury. Steph's coming back any week now, any day now. The young guys the other day showed that they can at least win some games right now against some crap competition down the stretch here. They're starting to get really valuable minutes from Kuminga, starting to get really valuable minutes from Ty Jerome, which is crazy to think out loud, that kind of guy. Shout out Ty Jerome, 20 minutes out of Virginia, playing really well for the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, they've got to figure out this road thing. 7-23 is atrocious, but anytime they're at home, they're 24-7. So they're winning the games that they should have. They're 5-5 in their last 10, so obviously that's counting 5 before the All-Star break, and then they've, I believe, they're 3-2 since the All-Star break ended and restarted. But I'm not panicking on the Warriors. I think if you've got some conglomerate of Steph and Clay and Dre, I think they'll be fine. The Wiggins thing out indefinitely because of a family situation is concerning because obviously you need your guy who was your best player, or second best player, in the playoffs last year and in the finals. Obviously you need him to play. So very, very carefully, I'm not hitting the panic button on the Warriors because I think they'll be fine. Do I think they get into the 6-5 range? Maybe, maybe not. They'll probably still be a play-in team if they don't keep this up because people don't realize the season's almost over. Kind of scary to say, right? There's only 20-some-odd games left, so they've got to really win down the stretch here if they want to kind of at least not have to worry about the play-in. And I'm going to panic button, or I'm not going to hit the panic button very carefully on the Golden State Warriors. The Dallas Mavericks, I am absolutely hitting the panic button on 32-30. They are 5-5 in their last 10 as well. They aren't good on the road, 12-19. They're 20-11 at home, so just barely above 500. Obviously, the Kyrie and Luka Doncic experiment is just getting started. I'm hitting the panic button because of head coach Jason Kidd, who I've historically been very high on and given very high praise, and yet he made comments in the post-game press conference basically saying that he isn't the one out there playing the games and winning the games, and he's the one choosing to play Dwight Powell in crunch time instead of Christian Wood, who's been really good this year, especially for the Mavericks. So I'm really just not happy with the situation in Dallas, and obviously their defensive concerns in the lineups with Dwight Powell and Josh Green, who's been playing unbelievable, but yet Jason Kidd played him only like 12 minutes after he had his career high. Don't understand what's going on in Dallas, and, well, I do understand what's going on, and it's not working, but I am hitting the panic button on the Dallas Mavericks. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the Dallas Mavericks, as well as some friends of the show, Alex and Nick, I am talking on their show. By the time you hear this, it will be out. I will try to put it at the top of the screen on YouTube, as well as link in the description below. All ball, no foul. I'll be talking to those guys. Recording this right after I'm done with this solo show. It should be out by then. If not, it'll be out. I'll put it in the description. We talk about Dallas and some of their struggles. The Clippers, I'm not worried at all, even though they gave up 77 to the Sacramento Kings the other night in the second highest scoring effort in NBA history. It's just hilarious that Mike Brown is a defensive coach for the Kings, and they gave up 176 to the Clippers, 175, whichever one it was. And then Ty Lue, another defensive coach, gave up 100 and whatever it was to the Kings. So, no, I'm not worried about the Clippers. I think they're getting right. I think their depth is really good. I like the Bones Highland move. I like that they are doing really well with Mason Plumlee, seeing some valuable minutes there from the big spot, giving Zubac some time, much-needed time off, and to be able to be more available for the playoffs. I think they will be just fine down the stretch here. They're starting to figure out that rotation and really learn from some of the mistakes they had earlier in the year, and their best two guys are playing healthy, so I have nothing to panic about right this moment. Phoenix, I'll be really quick on this. Kevin Durant, as you're hearing this, is returning tonight against the Charlotte Hornets. The game will have already happened. I'll try to put something on the screen if I can remember. The Kevin Durant is returning against the Charlotte Hornets. So they are, they're on a 6-4 in their last 10, and they're getting Kevin Durant back. Nothing to worry about there. Sacramento, it is real what is happening in Sacramento. 35-25. They are in a 3-game win streak, 6-4 in their last 10. They are winning games. They're beating their conference pretty handily, 23-13. I am not worried about the Sacramento Kings, and I am very excited to see how they turn out. Memphis Grizzlies, I am going to hit the panic button because of their fourth quarter offense. Their final 5 minutes of games is really, really concerning, and how some of the quality of shots they're getting up. And obviously, it's John Morant barreling into 2 or 3 defenders and figuring out where the ball needs to go. Guys like Dylan Brooks and Desmond Bane need to be obviously more involved in the offense other than just being catch-and-shoot players. Jared Jackson Jr. obviously isn't getting valuable touches as a capable offensive player. I think the Memphis Grizzlies do need to figure out that fourth quarter offense. I'm very, very capable, or I think Taylor Jenkins is very capable of figuring that out. Memphis Grizzlies, I am going to hit the panic button only because of the offense. Their defense is stellar behind Jared Jackson Jr. Steven Adams being out has hurt them. I think they will be fine once they turn it around. I'm hitting the panic button on their offense. And then Denver at 43-19 with a pretty commanding 5.5 game lead on Memphis. They're going to pretty much run away with the 1 seed in the West. I have no reason to believe that they should be panicking. So that is not happening. No panic button there. In the Eastern Conference, we got to keep rolling here. So we have time for Carolina Duke at the end. We'll start at the top this time. We'll go work our way down. Milwaukee 43-17. They are on a 14-game win streak. Absolutely nothing to worry about there. Boston 7-3 in their last 10. They lost a tough game to New York the other night. I do think the Knicks are a really tough team. We'll talk about them in a minute. Getting hot at the right time. Boston, nothing to worry about. Philly, keep an eye on them. Some of the coaching situation with Doc Rivers and some of the decision makings in the fourth quarters here has not been good from him. I'm not going to hit the panic button because I think they're talented and I think they can win at least 2 playoff series, so I'm not going to hit the panic button on them. Cleveland 39-25, no reason to worry about them. They're 11-3 in their division this year, 26-7 at home. So when they're playing in Cleveland, they're beating anybody, and if they're a top 4 seed, they're going to have that home court advantage. They're also 6-0 in overtime games this year. That's kind of insane. Winning close games, I think in Ken Palmer and the NCAA, we would call that luck. But anyway, Cleveland, I think, is doing really well right now. New York, like we just talked about, the Knicks, I am not worried whatsoever. They just got Mitchell Robinson back. They're playing stellar defense right now. They figured out a really good lineup with, I believe it was Quickly and Brunson. Who else was it now? Randall. I'm forgetting who the three was, but either way. And then Robinson. And they were figuring out that lineup now and seeing really, really good production in the final stretches of minutes, holding Boston under 100 points, Jason Tatum under 15 points, which is crazy. So the Knicks are doing really well right now. I'm not worried. The Brooklyn Nets, panic button-wise, 3-7 in their last 10. Obviously, they disbanded and got rid of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Hit the panic button on them. They need to tank anyway. They need to figure out how they're going to align some of those picks, et cetera. Start getting rid of guys. Start figuring out why Seth Curry is even on their roster, and some playoff team hasn't tried to come get him from a buyout. Brooklyn, I don't really know. Is this one of those teams like, do I hit the panic button, or do I just care and say, no, like there's nothing to panic about because they're clearly going to start losing? I don't know. Brooklyn, sure, we'll hit the panic button on them. The Miami Heat, no reason to hit the panic button because they just beat Philly in Philly. Jimmy Butler had an unbelievable game, almost a revenge game in a sense. They are starting to click at the right time. I don't believe in them long-term, to be completely clear, but Miami, I have nothing to worry about right this moment. Panic button, I would be careful. I'd keep my hand near the button, but I wouldn't hit the button. I do think they're starting to see the best defensive stretch of Bam Adebayo's career right now, which is going to be really important for them. So in terms of panic button, the rest of the East is kind of weird. So Atlanta, I'm going to hit the panic button, except for the fact they just hired Quinn Snyder, who's a pretty darn good defensive coach. So if he can figure out what the stretch of the playoffs is looking like, but it's really hard to assimilate a really good coach like that in 20 games or less, which I find the timing of it just ridiculous. Why they didn't fire McMillan 40 games earlier. Hawks fans, I'm taking your side on this one. Please don't attack me. I am going to hit the panic button on the Atlanta Hawks because I don't understand how this ends well this year. Now, if they make the play-in 7, 8, 9, 10 like they did last year when they played Charlotte, sure, and they could at least give somebody a fight. But if you're Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, or Cleveland, and even New York, I just don't think Atlanta beats them. I know what happened with New York and Atlanta before. Don't come at me. Toronto, just based on the fact that they're 7-3 in their last 10, I'm not going to hit the panic button because they're talented enough and they didn't blow it up at the trade deadline. Once again, bringing that up. I think that they have the opportunity to stay in the play-in race here, and the fact they're only 4 games back from Brooklyn means anybody can get that 6th seed in the East, and I'm very safely going to say not hitting the panic button. The Wizards, I'm hitting the panic button. This is stupid. This team sucks. I don't care what anyone says. I know that they've got some really talented pieces at different stretches. Johnny Davis just had his career high in the G League, 25 points, so hopefully see him play more minutes for the Wizards. I think they just need to continue to try to stink, get a better pick. Better off bottoming out for Wemby. Wemby is what I think I said. Was better off bottoming out for Wemby in my NBA Contenders article. Check that out on TwoPointersPodcast.com if you haven't. It's completely free. Link in the description below. Chicago, 100% panic button. This team stinks. Lonzo Ball's knee, sounds like he may not play for a long time, if not ever again. It's really concerning what's happening with that. Very simply put, the Chicago Bulls, the panic button is being hit 100%. The Indiana Pacers, nothing to be panicked about when you're a young team that's bad and losing finally, as they should, 27-35. They continue to lose down the stretch here. I would hit the panic button if they start winning games because they just need to keep losing, get a better draft pick, and continue to build upon this really young, awesome core. Orlando, same thing, no panic button needed. They're 26-36. They're exceeding expectations. Charlotte, I am hitting the panic button on very quickly. LaMelo Ball did fracture his ankle, and they officially put him out for the rest of the year. I'm putting a panic button on any team that loses their superstar, their clear best player, their franchise-altering piece to any kind of injury of a foot or lower body of any kind. Hopefully he gets better and recovers and comes back next season bigger and better than ever, and potentially with a world-class teammate in Scoot Henderson or Victor Wembanyama or some kind of top lottery prospect talent. 20-43 for the Hornets. They are on a 5-game win streak, as crazy as it sounds. Gordon Hayward is playing some of the best basketball he's played in the last 4 years. In that Charlotte contract, unfortunately, but 5-game win streak here. They're 5-5 in their last 10. Charlotte, I am hitting the panic button only because your best player just fractured his ankle. Nothing otherwise. Detroit, 15-47. Nothing to panic about when you suck and you are losing games. All right. Let me know your thoughts below on some of the teams that I hit the panic button on. Let me know if your team should be hitting the panic button, if I disagreed or agreed with you. Let's move on to UNC Duke. As you're hearing this, the game has not happened yet. If you're listening to this before Saturday, I believe it's March 4th, whatever day Saturday is from now, March 3rd. I don't even know anymore. But we're going to preview UNC Duke. March 4th. I was right on that. We are going to preview UNC and Duke, what I think is going to happen, some of the implications of that game on seeding. I'm also going to talk about that a little bit on the live stream, so this is my last plug of this episode for the live stream, unless I do it at the end. But click the link in the description below, playback.tv. I'll be hanging out with Ryan Hammer, Jimmer Range, Carl, and potentially Alex will be coming by. We'll talk seeding implications for North Carolina if they win the game. Duke, regardless of the game's result, will be in the NCAA tournament. We'll figure out where they end up. We'll talk about maybe some of the draft prospects in that game. Obviously, a big matchup there. So, in UNC Duke, obviously, I got a chance to see the Blue Devils go up against Louisville in Durham a few weeks ago. Got to see some of the physicality of this team, even though a 4-23 Louisville team did put up a fight. We'll talk about what that implies in just a moment. North Carolina has got a big win against Virginia at home, and then they went down to Tallahassee and took on the Seminoles, and they were up 27 at one point and ended up only winning the game by 10. So, Heels fans calling them the heart attack Heels is obviously disgraceful to NC State and their famous cardiac pack nickname, but that's besides the point. But both these teams obviously here are starting to win games and figure themselves out a little bit. Duke's obviously starting to really understand its identity a little bit better. North Carolina's fighting for its life. Obviously, that's going to make this rivalry game even more fun. It is the best rivalry in all of sports. Don't at me. Don't come at me. You can block me if you disagree. But no, please don't block me. But with understanding what the implications of this game are, I do think it's really important coming into that stretch, like I said, or coming into the game, what's known. Duke is now on, I believe, a 5-game win streak. They beat Virginia Tech, or 4-game win streak if they beat NC State tonight. Go back. They are playing NC State the night I'm recording this. The result will have already happened by the time this podcast goes out. But looking past those games, I think it's really important. Carolina's next game is Duke on Saturday, so that is completely what they are preparing for, which I do think is kind of important down the stretch, that you get your full week to prepare for your biggest rival and not have to worry about rest and guys playing 3 games or 2 games in 3 days and all that stupid stuff. Like, North Carolina is going to have all day to prepare for a home game against their biggest rival, and I think that is a really interesting place that they can be in, judging by the fact that they did just play one of the best defenses in the country in Virginia, at Virginia, also important to know. They also have a really interesting challenge here as they have to figure out how they're going to play, because obviously they have a backcourt that is as inconsistent as ever, or as anybody's, in Caleb Love and RJ Davis. But they last couple games have played really well, and I think that that's going to be a huge difference maker. And if those guys come in and have their kind of game, this is going to be close. I don't think this is going to be one of those games that one team or another. I hate to sit here and give you the cliche like, this is going to be a close game as always because it's a rivalry game. Sure, right? But at the end of the day, both these teams are built and are starting to get right in different aspects. North Carolina from the guard department. That's nothing against Roach and Proctor on Duke's side. I just think Duke's wings are starting to really get things put together here. Lively's shot blocking is legit, and he is going to be a physical presence. I'm going to be really intrigued to watch his matchup against Baycott. It's going to come down to who really honestly gets in foul trouble first. I think as a physical game that it is, I mean, obviously some of the calls North Carolina has not gotten down the stretch here, I think maybe will get made up here for in Chapel Hill against their biggest rival, but hopefully this is a fair, clean-cut game. I think it's just going to come down to if a combination of Puff Johnson or Pete Nance get hot. I think that's going to be really important for the Tar Heels. But I do think Mark Mitchell is playing some of the best defense. Coach Shire agrees. He said in the press conference after the Louisville game, spoke and said that he thinks Mark is playing some of the best crunch time of his and defensive rotational minutes here that he's played all season. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he mans up on. I think his primary matchup will probably be Pete Nance or Leaky Black out the stretch, but I think how he switches on to Puff Johnson and seeing some of those minutes against their best three-point shooter in North Carolina, I think Mark Mitchell's role is going to be really important in this game. Obviously, not a shooter, and neither is Filipowski, but he can take that shot and make that shot. I think the three-point shooting is going to be really intriguing because obviously Duke's guards are starting to get it figured out a little bit. Derek, after I spoke with him after the Louisville game, he does feel like his shot is in the best place it can be right now, and I think he's starting to get to full 100% strength. This is going to be a game that really tests test where his foot really is, where his leg really is, that injury. I do think that this is going to be one of the most rigorous games he's played all year, if not the most rigorous. The matchup's going to be really important, though, like I said, into two guards versus, Tyrese Proctor, who's shown he can be a really good defensive guard, and I think this is going to be the game where he puts himself on the map defensively. People start to wake up and realize that he's going to hold one of the combination of these two guys. You can't guard them both, right? But the combination of being able to guard those guys tough in Love and Davis, and I think he can do it, and I think he can step up to the challenge. The biggest difference, or the biggest thing that's going to change this game is going to be the three-point shooting. I really look forward to seeing whichever team. I know Granderson for Duke is having a really hot streak right now. I believe he had 4 threes against Louisville when I was there. Just down the stretch of this game, in the last 5 minutes, you're going to see calls start to slow down. Refs swallow the whistles. They let these teams play. It's always been physical. As somebody who's got to watch this their whole life in their backyard, these two teams, people don't realize that these two teams get to play each other in the final 5 minutes. They get to really go pound for pound and see who wins the game. And at least historically, I know they have instances where they've not swallowed the whistle, but as long as it's legitimate basketball and it's not, egregiously being fouled and on both ends of the floor, I think this game will come down to an under 5-point game. I don't currently know the spread. I can look that up, but I don't think that really matters. I just think whatever the line is, I think it's going to be close. I think the game being in Chapel Hill doesn't necessarily matter because I think this Duke team, other than that big loss they took on the road at Miami, I do think that they can go on the road, and I do think they can win. I think Shire's starting to really get some confidence as a coach, but it's going to be tough. I mean, both very inexperienced coaches who have been two different places here. Looks like currently Duke is the favorite at 3.5. So I don't know. I think I'm not going to give my opinion on what you should bet for that because it's this game. Anything can happen. But that is, I think, going to be a close game. I think that spread is very accurate. So coaching-wise, I do think Hubert Davis, some of the rotations and some of the decisions he's made down the stretch in some of these games this last couple of weeks, it seems like he's not – like the game in Durham, he got out-coached. Like I know that it was a home game for Shire, and I know there was there was an environmental shift there, but I questioned Shire's coaching most of the year, and then I realized it's just going to take time. This is a really interesting piece where a team with a lot of pieces that really don't fit. Lively being a true one-positional center, and shot blocker Filipowski being that big but that plays like a power forward who is stretching the floor at an okay rate. Mark Mitchell, who's not a shooter. Tyrese Proctor, who's figuring out his shot, shooting under 29%. But is a capable playmaker and defender. So, the pieces just aren't perfect, and I'm starting to see, and Derek obviously playing two guard there, but I'm starting to see this shift for Duke. I got to see it, like I said, in person. I'm really impressed with what I think they can be, but I think the matchups are going to be really important. I will say what's really important to know is North Carolina this year, and especially down the stretch, I know they've shot the ball well, but they aren't built as a three-point shooting team when those guards aren't hitting the shots. So when Love and Davis aren't shooting the ball well, you're relying on Puff Johnson and Pete Nance, who right now Puff has been the more reliable of the two. And I do think it's really important that Duke is that physical team that can really man you up. We saw what Derek Lively could do with the 8 blocks against North Carolina last time. So with the way Baycott obviously has not been playing well down the stretch here last couple of games, I do think it's really important that if Derek Lively is there and is able to make that defensive impact, then I think Duke will pull this game out. That is my official prediction. I think Shire is coaching some of his best basketball this year in the last few weeks, but seeing how this all comes together, I do think Duke can come in there, into their house, into whatever you want to call it, in the Dean Dome. I don't want to come up with some fancy name for this matchup. It is going to be awesome. It is going to be everything that we expect it to be, and then some, like always. I do love this matchup regardless of what I am as a fan on either side of the ball. I don't like either of these teams, but I am appreciative of good basketball in North Carolina, and I do think this game is really close. I don't think it's going to be some classic, but I think it's going to be really fun to watch. I do think Duke wins the game. I think for the fun of the fact that it's 3.5, I do think Duke covers as well. I do think Duke wins by at least 4, but I do think it'll still be a close game. 4 is nothing to write home about. I think that is an impressive win nonetheless if you go into Chapel Hill on a team that is fighting for its life and on its last leg here to try to get into the tournament, which we know they're probably better at when they're fully healthy and playing well this year. So I do think Duke wins the game. In terms of the spread, I do think that is a good value at 3.5. So Summarizing here, if you want to come watch, I guess I said I wouldn't plug this again, but here we go. If you want to watch UNC and Duke on playback.tv, click the link in the description below. Super easy. You can do it on your phone on the playback.tv app. You can also, I do recommend it on the browser, so you can watch your TV providers there. You can link your account so that you can talk to me, chat, and I can see who you are, pull you up on stage. We'll talk about the game, the different seating implications, just whatever you want to talk about, right? At halftime, we're going to have plenty of time there to talk about whatever we saw in the game and whatever other storylines are going on in college basketball, right? This is the home stretch. The NBA playoffs are around the corner, right? March Madness is in literally less than, oh my gosh, 17th. March Madness is in 2 weeks, basically. So looking forward to that. I'll have a lot of content coming out for you guys. Don't forget to check out in the link in the description below, SeatGeek, the presenting sponsor of the Two Pointers podcast, $20 off your first order. Code 2Pointers. Link in the description below takes you to download SeatGeek as well as to the website. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know and listening. Let me know what you think of the panic button at the beginning. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong with your team. As well as your thoughts and your predictions on UNC Duke. Comment below, tweet at me. 2Pointers on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok comments. Let me know what your predictions are for that. Hope to see you guys in the live stream. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This has been the 2Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and we'll see you later.